the loaf of despair. When an inmate breaks the rules, throws food, attacks staff, or refuses orders, the kitchen has a special weapon, the nutraloaf. Picture this. All the leftovers of the day, vegetables, bread, beans, maybe even a splash of fruit, all blended, baked, and shaped into a heavy brick. No seasoning, no care, just a block of calories. For 3 meals a day, that's all they get. No variety, no flavor, just loaf after loaf. Inmates describe it as so dry you need water to swallow it. Some say it tastes like cardboard. Others say it's worse than any punishment in solitary. And here's the shocking part. Some men choose to starve rather than eat it. The silent protest. Food inside a place like ADX is more than nutrition. It's the last form of control. When a prisoner refuses a loaf, it isn't just about hunger. It's a message. You may have my freedom, but you won't have my dignity. One former inmate recalled how men would let the loaf rot on the floor, drawing insects into the cell, just to show guards they wouldn't touch it. But ADX has an answer for that, too. If a prisoner refuses too many meals, they can be put on force feeding, a tube down the nose, delivering liquid nutrition straight into the stomach. It's painful, it's humiliating, and it's the ultimate battle between survival and surrender. And that's when the story takes an even darker turn. Imagine sitting in a small concrete cell, locked down for 23 hours a day. You're America's most dangerous prisoner. But the real shock isn't just the silence. It's what's placed on your food tray. No hot meal, no flavor, no choice. Just a cold, tasteless loaf. Something that looks like brown cardboard, packed with beans, flour, and mystery powder. This isn't just punishment. It's survival at its lowest level. One inmate once said, that loaf wasn't food, it was punishment disguised as dinner. But why would the government feed men like this? And what happens when even the worst criminals in America refuse to eat? Stay with me. Because the story of the meals inside ADX Florence isn't just about hunger. It's about control, defiance, and the breaking point. Welcome to ADX. ADX Florence, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, is the most secure prison in the United States. Buried in the Colorado mountains, it's designed to hold terrorists, mob bosses, cartel leaders, and gang shot callers who can't be controlled anywhere else. Life here is extreme. Inmates spend nearly every second in solitary. Even their food is delivered through a small slot in the door. And that tray? It tells you everything about how the prison works. At first glance, the meals might not seem so bad. Standard prison food, powdered eggs, beans, rice, a slice of meat, maybe an apple. But hidden underneath that tray is a darker story about punishment meals. Hunger games behind steel doors. Inside ADX Florence, the food tray becomes a weapon of control. Every bite is a reminder that the prison decides what goes into your body. Some inmates try to get clever. They'd stash bits of bread, an apple, or a packet of jelly, hiding it away for later. But the guards always found it. Cells were searched daily. Anything not eaten was tossed away. Others tried trading food through the narrow slots in their doors. But even that was dangerous. A guard could catch you passing something, and instantly your menu would change, straight back to the dreaded nutraloaf. The longer you stayed at ADX, the more you realized food wasn't just food. It was power. Famous criminals, famished plates. The names inside ADX are chilling. The Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski ate alone in silence for years before his death. Ramzi Youssef, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, once complained that even the prison's rice was so undercooked it cracked his teeth. El Chapo, the Mexican cartel boss, went from luxury meals in Mexico to plain beans and rice served on cold plastic trays. Each one of these men, who once had millions at their command, was reduced to begging for salt, sugar, or an extra slice of bread. Imagine running a cartel worth billions, only to find yourself fighting over ketchup packets. That's the harsh reality of ADX meals, when food becomes punishment. For most of us, punishment means losing TV or not being allowed outside. But here it's deeper. At ADX, punishment can arrive 3 times a day. The nutraloaf isn't just about making life hard. It's about breaking the will of men who refuse to bow down. You can survive weeks without sunlight, months without human touch. But can you survive months without real food? One former ADX guard admitted, "We knew it wasn't about nutrition. It was about breaking a man's spirit. The truth is, a plate of plain beans might not sound terrifying, but when it's the only thing you'll taste for years, it becomes a prison inside the prison. Starvation is rebellion. Some inmates decided to fight back the only way they could, by starving. One man, locked away for violence against guards, went on a hunger strike. For days, he refused everything on his tray. At first, the staff didn't care. They watched, they waited, but by day 10, when his body began to weaken, the prison stepped in. A team in riot gear stormed his cell. He was strapped to a chair, arms and legs bound. Then came the tube, forced down his nose into his throat. Liquid food was pumped directly into his stomach. He gagged. He cried out, but there was no escape. This wasn't just about keeping him alive. It was about reminding him, even your hunger isn't your own. The psychology of the plate. Psychologists who study ADX say the food itself plays a role in breaking down the mind. Meals are designed to be bland, repetitive, predictable. Why? Because boredom is a weapon. If every day you wake up to the same tasteless food, you lose track of time. Days blur into weeks. Weeks blur into years. One former prisoner explained it like this: "After a while, I wasn't eating to live. I was eating because my body demanded it. The food had no taste, no meaning. It was like chewing paper." And that's when the prison wins. When even food no longer feels like food, survival becomes mechanical. Cravings turn to madness. Imagine craving pizza, a burger, or even just a soda. Things you and I can grab anytime. For an inmate at ADX, those cravings become torture. Some men describe vivid dreams about food. They'd wake up tasting chocolate, only to find another block of loaf waiting on their tray. Others would draw food menus on scraps of paper, just to pretend they had a choice. But for some, the cravings turned darker. In desperation, they'd eat toothpaste, paper, even dust scraped from the floor, just to feel something different on their tongue. That's how far the hunger at ADX could push a man. The breaking point. There are stories of men who completely snapped. One inmate, after months of punishment meals, smeared his tray across the walls and screamed for hours. Another banged on his steel door, demanding real food until his hands were bloody. But the staff didn't flinch. To them, this was a design. Food wasn't comfort here, it was control. And if you lost your mind over a cold tray of beans, that was just another victory for the prison. And this is where things get even darker. Because some of the harshest ADX food stories aren't just about bland meals, but about what happens when meals are used as bargaining chips, currency, and even weapons among inmates themselves. Food as currency. In most prisons, food is money. A honey bun, a ramen pack, or a bag of chips can buy favors, protection, or loyalty. But inside ADX Florence, with almost no contact between inmates, food trading becomes nearly impossible. Still, prisoners found ways. Some use the thin cracks under their cell doors to slide packets of sugar or butter from one cell to another. Others would fish, tying a string to a milk carton and sliding it down the hallway, hoping another inmate would hook it with his own line. These tiny exchanges became lifelines. Imagine risking punishment just for a teaspoon of sugar. That's how much power food carried. But it wasn't always friendly. Sometimes food became a weapon, the weaponization of hunger. When an inmate wanted revenge, he didn't always need a shank. He could wait. If you angered the wrong person, you might wake up to find your meal tray smeared with filth, contaminated before it even reached you. It wasn't hard. Guards rarely checked every tray carefully. One chilling story tells of an inmate who refused to eat for 3 days after finding spit in his food. He never proved who did it, but the message was clear. Inside ADX, hunger could be used as punishment, even between prisoners. Food wasn't just survival anymore. It was psychological warfare, smuggling flavors. Even in a place designed to strip away every comfort, inmates still fought to taste something normal. How? By smuggling. Some men saved packets of ketchup or mustard for weeks, hiding them under mattresses or in soap containers. Others crushed up crackers, and mix them with water to make a paste that felt like bread dough. It sounds small, but those tiny acts of rebellion mattered. In a world where you had no control, seasoning your beans with stolen ketchup felt like victory. But smuggling didn't always end well. One inmate was caught hiding packets of salt. His punishment? A full month on nothing but nutraloaf. The message was simple. Taste was a privilege, not a right. The psychology of denial. Food deprivation isn't just physical, it's mental torture. ADX staff knew this. Meals were carefully designed to remove pleasure. No spices, no sugar, no fat, just enough nutrition to keep men alive, but never enough to make them feel human. Experts call it sensory monotony. The same taste, over and over, until your brain shuts down the part that finds joy in eating. One prisoner described it like this. It wasn't food anymore. It was fuel. Every bite reminded me I was nothing but a number to them. That's the hidden cruelty. ADX wasn't just starving bodies. It was starving souls. When food sparks violence, even with isolation, tempers boiled over. One day in the small recreation cages, concrete boxes where inmates get an hour of fresh air, a prisoner snapped after discovering his tray was missing part of his meal. He screamed, cursed, and threw himself at the cage door until guards dragged him away. Another inmate refused to return his tray, banging it against the steel bars until it bent. He was tackled by a tactical team, then strapped down and force-fed. For outsiders, these outbursts seem extreme. But inside ADX, when food is the only thing you have, taking away can push a man past his breaking point. The loaf's dark history. The nutraloaf didn't start at ADX. It's been used in prisons across America as a punishment meal, but Florence perfected it. Each loaf is around 1,000 calories, beans, flour, powdered milk, maybe some vegetables, mashed together into a brick. No seasoning, no shape, no comfort. Courts have debated whether it's even legal. Some states banned it after lawsuits claimed it was cruel and unusual punishment. But at ADX, the loaf remained. For prisoners here, it was more than food. It was a reminder that no matter how strong you thought you were, the system could take away even your ability to taste. Cracks in the system. But here's the twist. Even the harshest system has cracks. Some guards quietly slipped inmates extra fruit or an extra packet of sugar, especially those who behaved. It was against the rules, but in a place so cold, small kindnesses meant everything. One inmate later admitted, "That single apple a guard gave me, I held on to it for days before eating it. It reminded me I was still human." But kindness was rare. For most men, ADX meals remained nothing but a daily battle between hunger and despair. Beyond survival, after years on the ADX diet, prisoners leave broken. Many lose teeth from malnutrition. Others gain weight from the carb-heavy menu. Some leave with stomach problems that never heal. The prison doesn't care. Meals aren't about health. They're about control. And that's the truth no one tells you. ADX Florence isn't just a prison of steel and concrete. It's a prison of food. And for the men trapped inside, the harshest punishment isn't the silence or the isolation. It's sitting down, day after day, to a tray that reminds them they'll never taste freedom again. Holiday illusions. For most people, holidays mean feasts. Turkey at Thanksgiving, cake on birthdays, or barbecue on the 4th of July. But inside ADX Florence, holidays are just another day of monotony. Prison officials sometimes try to soften it. Maybe a slice of turkey instead of beans. Maybe a cupcake on Christmas. But even then, the portions are so small that it feels more like an insult than a gift. One prisoner described Christmas dinner like this. "They gave us turkey, so dry it crumbled like sand, mashed potatoes like paste, and one cookie the size of a coin." It was their way of saying, "See? We can give you joy if we want, but only in crumbs." For men who once lived in excess, drug lords, mobsters, millionaires, the reminder of what they'd lost cut deeper than any punishment meal. The science of starvation. Doctors who studied ADX inmates say their bodies slowly adapt to the bland diet. But the mind begins to deteriorate. Without variety, the brain stops releasing dopamine during meals. Eating no longer feels satisfying. It becomes mechanical, robotic. Men lose the ability to look forward to anything. Then comes malnutrition. Some inmates develop brittle nails, thinning hair, or anemia. Others gain unhealthy weight from too many carbs and not enough protein. But the cruelest effect is psychological. Food becomes meaningless. Imagine chewing without tasting, swallowing without caring. That's what breaks a man long before his sentence ends. Celebrity criminals at the table. ADX holds some of the most infamous criminals in America. Each of them has a story tied to the food tray. Jakar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, was once spotted trading away apples for extra bread. Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, reportedly hoarded packets of jelly, guarding them like treasure. El Chapo Guzman, once fed caviar and steak in Mexico, complained bitterly about the tasteless beans and rice in Florence. For him, food wasn't just survival, it was a daily humiliation. Each tray delivered to their doors wasn't just a meal. It was a reminder that they'd gone from power to powerlessness. Food as timekeeper. Inside ADX, days don't move with the clock. There are no schedules for work, no classrooms, no normal routine. The only thing marking time is the arrival of meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's it. Prisoners describe waiting at their steel doors, staring at the slot, listening for the rattle of keys. That means food is coming. Some would count the minutes. Others would try to guess the meal. Would it be beans again, or rice, or just another slab of loaf? In the absence of freedom, meals became the calendar. If you missed one, the day felt incomplete. If you refused one, the day became rebellion, the black market of flavor. Even in solitary, ingenuity thrives. Prisoners created secret recipes from scraps. Coffee grounds mixed with sugar to simulate chocolate. Powdered milk blended with water to make makeshift yogurt. Crushed crackers and toothpaste rolled into a paste they pretended was candy. These creations weren't delicious, but they gave men something the prison tried to strip away: imagination. One inmate proudly said, "That cracker paste wasn't candy, but in my head, it was a Snickers bar. And for 10 minutes, I felt human again." But if guards discovered these recipes, punishment came fast. The prison's message was clear: you don't get to control even the smallest flavor in your life. The hunger strike epidemic. ADX Florence has faced multiple hunger strikes over the years. Groups of inmates refusing meals together, not out of weakness, but out of protest. One strike lasted over a month. The prisoners demanded better food, more variety, and an end to nutraloaf. The administration responded with force feeding, isolation, and silence. Official reports say the strikes failed, but in reality, they exposed something powerful. Food was the only weapon left for men who had lost everything else. And each hunger strike raised a terrifying question: how far would a prison go to keep men alive against their will? Guards' perspective. It's easy to see guards as villains, but many of them hated the system too. Some admitted they couldn't stomach the same food the inmates ate. A few confessed they occasionally slipped prisoners small extras, like sugar packets, out of pity, but others defended the menu. One officer said, "These guys aren't here for jaywalking. They killed, they bombed, they destroyed lives." If their biggest complaint is a tasteless loaf, then the system's working. This clash of views shows a deeper truth. At ADX, food isn't just nutrition. It's politics, punishment, and power, all served on a tray. The taste of freedom. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of all is what happens when an inmate finally leaves ADX through transfer, parole, or rarely release. The first real meal outside is overwhelming. Men cry over cheeseburgers, shake when handed pizza, or can't believe the sweetness of a soda. Some even vomit because their bodies can't handle real food anymore. One former inmate said, "That first bite of steak after ADX, I couldn't stop crying. Not because of the taste, but because it reminded me I was alive again." That's the kind of damage years of punishment meals can do. The bigger question. All of this raises one chilling question. Is food inside ADX about feeding men or about breaking them? Critics argue the bland meals, the nutraloaf, and the forced monotony cross the line into torture. The prison claims it's just security. But ask the men who've lived it, and they'll tell you the truth. At ADX Florence, food isn't just harsh. It's the cruelest sentence of all. The lawsuits begin. For years, prisoners tried to fight back against ADX meals not with fists, but with lawyers. One lawsuit argued that the nutraloaf was inhumane and violated the Eighth Amendment, which protects against cruel and unusual punishment. Another case claimed inmates were denied basic nutrition, leading to permanent health problems. Some courts agreed, forcing prisons in states like Vermont and New York to ban nutraloaf entirely. But ADX Florence? Untouched. Why? Because the prison argued their menu met federal nutrition standards. The loaf had the right amount of calories, vitamins, and minerals. Taste, they said, is not a constitutional right. And with that, the lawsuits collapsed. The loaf stayed. Taxpayers' secret bill. Here's the part no one talks about. You and I pay for these meals. The cost of feeding one inmate at ADX is estimated at $30,000 per year. Multiply that by over 400 prisoners, and the annual food bill climbs into the millions. But here's the twist. Despite the high costs, the quality of food remains rock bottom. Why? Because most of the money goes not into ingredients, but into the security of delivering meals safely. Guards, scanners, metal detectors, all to serve a tray through a slot. So taxpayers fund a system where bland beans and cardboard loaf cost as much as gourmet dining. The question is, are we paying for nutrition or for control? Meals compared worldwide. ADX isn't the only supermax prison in the world. But when it comes to meals, it might be the harshest. In Norway's Halden prison, even dangerous inmates get fresh vegetables, fish, and bread baked daily. Some can cook their own meals in supervised kitchens. In Japan's Fuchu prison, meals are strict but balanced. Rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and protein every day. In Russia's Black Dolphin prison, food is barely survival level. Watery soup, bread, and thin porridge. By comparison, ADX Florence sits in the middle. Calories are counted. Nutrition is adequate. But flavor? Completely stripped away. The contrast reveals something chilling. While other countries focus on rehabilitation or survival, ADX meals are built for one purpose: psychological punishment. The whispered reports. Over the years, leaked government reports have painted a darker picture. Inspectors noted that inmates complained of chronic diarrhea, weight loss, and dental decay linked to the ADX diet. Others reported suicidal thoughts tied directly to the monotony of food. One internal memo even admitted, meals are designed to maintain compliance, not comfort. That single line exposes the truth. Food isn't just about survival here. It's a lever of control, carefully engineered to break the spirit. But what happens when breaking the spirit breaks the system? The black hole of nutrition. Nutritionists who reviewed ADX meals say the numbers check out on paper. Around 2,700 calories a day, with enough carb, fats, and proteins to survive. But in reality, men often refuse trays, skip meals, or can't stomach the bland food. That drops intake down to survival-level starvation. The result is a prison full of men who look older than they are. Sunken cheeks, yellowing skin, malnourished bodies that reflect not just time in solitary, but years of tasteless survival. This isn't food as medicine. It's food as decay. The last luxury, coffee. Believe it or not, the only small luxury left at ADX is instant coffee. Tiny packets, bitter and weak. But for some men, it's a highlight of the day. Prisoners save them for moments when they need to stay awake, to read, or to write letters. Some hoard packets for weeks, trading them for sugar or butter. One inmate wrote in a letter, "That coffee wasn't just caffeine. It was the only taste that reminded me of freedom." But even coffee became a control tool. Misbehave, and packets disappeared from the commissary list. The forbidden recipes. Despite the restrictions, some prisoners created secret gourmet meals out of scraps, crushing ramen noodles from commissary and mixing them with beans, using toothpaste caps as measuring spoons, mixing instant coffee with sugar to pretend it was chocolate pudding. These makeshift recipes became survival rituals. They weren't about taste. They were about sanity. One man said, "Cooking in ADX wasn't about food. It was about remembering I was still alive enough to imagine." But once discovered, these recipes were destroyed and punishments followed. A day on the tray. To truly understand ADX, picture a full day's menu. Breakfast, powdered eggs, a slice of bread, maybe a piece of fruit. Lunch: a scoop of beans, rice, a small piece of meat, and water. Dinner: vegetables boiled until flavorless, plain pasta, and a cookie. Sounds tolerable until you repeat it. Not for a week, not for a month, but for 10, 15, 20 years. That's when meals stop being food. They become symbols of a system designed to erase the human experience, breaking men with a fork. In the end, ADX Florence meals aren't about filling stomachs. They're about emptying souls. Food is life. It's culture, comfort, and memory. Strip it of taste, and you strip life of meaning, one former warden once admitted privately. You want to break a man at ADX? Don't touch him. Don't beat him. Just feed him the same loaf every day until he forgets what joy feels like. That's the untold story of ADX Florence's menu. It isn't the harshest because of what's missing. It's harsh because of what it takes away. Choice, taste, and the feeling of being human. The illusion of control. For the outside world, food is choice. We decide what we eat, when we eat, how much we eat. But inside ADX Florence, food isn't choice, it's command. Every tray slid through that steel slot says the same thing. You are no longer in charge. We own your hunger. We own your body. We own your survival. Even men who once controlled entire cartels, terrorist networks, or organized crime empires found themselves powerless against a plastic tray of beans and rice. And that's the genius of ADX. It doesn't just cage men. It cages their appetite, their cravings, their humanity, the echo beyond the walls. When former ADX prisoners return to the outside, food is the first shock. Some cry when they bite into a burger. Others tremble when they sip soda, overwhelmed by sweetness they forgot existed. But many never recover. After years of punishment diets, their bodies reject rich food. Stomachs ache. Teeth are ruined. Digestion fails. Even in freedom, ADX follows them to the dinner table. The harshest menu doesn't just end with release. It lingers for life, a system built on silence. Critics call the ADX diet psychological torture. Supporters argue it's fair. But the truth lies in silence. The government rarely comments. Reports are locked away. And the prisoners themselves? Their voices barely escape those concrete walls. All that remains is the sound of trays sliding through a slot, 3 times a day. The quiet rhythm of control. And that's what makes ADX Florence different from any other prison on earth. It doesn't break men with chains or batons. It breaks them with the slow, daily cruelty of tasteless survival, the taste of nothing. In the end, ADX Florence isn't just the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It's a machine engineered not just to lock men away, but to erase them bite by bite. The harshest menu in America doesn't starve bodies. It starves dignity. It starves memory. It starves hope. So the next time you sit down for a meal, pizza with friends, a birthday cake, even just a hot cup of coffee, remember this. Somewhere in the mountains of Colorado, hundreds of men sit alone, staring at a cold, tasteless tray. And for them, freedom doesn't smell like open air. It doesn't sound like silence. It tastes like food. Food they may never experience again.